Hey, Simplifiers, it's Evan Umberger. Today is part 2 of the interview with Truitt, one of my dad's best friends, and just someone that I've really grown to love. And my kids, he's kind of like a grandfather to them. And so I just really want to encourage you, if you haven't listened to the first one, go ahead and listen to it. It may be something that you could listen to a couple of times. It is about an hour. This one's about an hour too. But there's a lot that we were able to dive into. We were able to talk more about how, regardless of how we grew up, being able to realize the opportunities of thankfulness and forgiveness that are all around us, and really the opportunity that we play in that. Also, we continued the theme of the ripple effect and how you can be able to bring light to the people around you. So go ahead, listen up, and let me know what your thoughts are. Love to hear from you.
I was raised by a good businessman and a good businesswoman, right? That both my parents were good business people in their own right. And I wish I was as efficient at some things that they did. But the lesson was my father. I mean, we grew up with the same. My dad would tell us. He would say he would ask a question if he didn't know the answer. He didn't want you to ask him. He would just say, literally, "Well, go find somebody that knows how to do all."
Right.
Or go ask, who do you know that would know the answer to that question? Well, you, Dad. Well, who else would know? What happens if I'm gone? Right? I mean, what happens
He's
if I
trying to
don't?
help you be resourceful. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was literally about just, it'll make you, when you're 9 years old and your dad tells you he's not going to answer the question because he wants you to go find it yourself. And it's a complicated question. It's not like that I bought a few head of cows and I was trying to figure out how to do something. I needed to get a loan at a bank and they weren't going to loan me the money because I'm 9.
Weren't you eventually the president of the Cattlemen's Association?
I was the executive director of Missouri Cattle.
I mean, still, but
yeah,
it's that path though that
well, yeah,
that kind of
no,
started
it's
the
a funny
journey,
path. Yeah, no, and even that, right? That wasn't what I planned on doing in life, right? I never planned to be in Washington D.C. It's farthest thing from my mind, and I do listen. I make it sound like maybe some people would take away from that. They go, well, some people enjoy the same thing for their whole life, right? I applaud them.
Right.
I wasn't that person, right? I wasn't wired that way. I wasn't cut out to do it. My wife would even mention it sometimes in my life, man, how many times are we going to roll the dice and gamble everything that we own,
Right.
And like I said, there's a bunch of business ventures that didn't work in the midst of all the ones that did, the small number that did. And so we're the typical American number, right? 70% of them fail for small businesses. And my thing is just, if you're going to fail, realize that you're going to quit right away so that you can get started on the next turn. Don't do something that's going to damage you permanently. There's no shame in it not working.
Right. Take a nap, get back up.
Yeah. New cup of coffee, right?
Right.
Or whatever it is your whatever it is that kind of just gets you that moment to just reflect. Find a peaceful pond somewhere and stare at the water for a little bit. For me, it's go sailing. Right?
Yeah. No, I was about to say, literally, it's funny. At the beginning of the month, we went to Florida and it was for a wedding. And it was, beautiful beach, Santa Rosa Beach. And it was the sand is just powder, snow. It's just so nice. And unfortunately, I didn't realize that was the only time that we were going to have at the beach.
Yeah.
And we didn't have our swimsuits, but the kids and I and Chelsea were just let's get wet anyway. Like
Yep.
we can put towels down,
Yeah.
whatever. And there was a moment where I just like, I actually enjoyed that the water was a little cold. It was nice.
Yep.
But I just kind of like got close enough where it was getting up, my calves, and I was everyone it would splash, it'd get me, but I was like just staring for a while. And I just heard
Right.
Chelsea in the background going to her friends, the one that was getting married and another bridesmaid.
Uh-huh.
I think Evan's just staring and
Yeah.
just thinking about all the life choices reflecting right now. That's exactly what was happening.
No, exactly right. But I think one of the things that happens to all of us is that we get caught up in this, in like this little circle, and your focus becomes all about the moment in the day, right? And instead
The
of,
the
it's,
the
it's
blinders,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, no, exactly. And instead, um, at least for people that believe like I do, there's something that's so much bigger than all of this, that most of this doesn't matter as anywhere near as much as we would think it does.
Yeah.
And so put it all into perspective. And once you
Mhm.
put it into perspective, then all of a sudden you can open your blinders a
Yeah.
lot wider and realize that maybe there is a spirit that's driving you here. Maybe there is, these people are in your lives, and maybe the bad thing that happened to you really
Mhm.
was done for your benefit, so that you would learn something from that, so that you could apply a different strategy in another place. That doesn't mean, listen, that doesn't mean that at the moment that it happens, that the failure occurs or that the loss occurs, it doesn't change
Yeah.
how they see it. It
No
never,
way. Mm-mm.
right? Um, But by the same token, I mean, there are things that you learn even in the worst of circumstances, you
Mhm.
know? And,
Do you have anything to share on that? Like a story?
well, it's a really sad story, right? But I mean, you know this story, but
Mhm.
other people, not everybody does, right? In 1987, we lost a little boy,
Yeah.
and that really was like, for me, it was, everybody. I tell people every once in a while, I've only learned a few absolutes. One of them is that everybody handles grief differently,
Mhm.
and there's no wrong way unless you're harming yourself.
Mm.
And but that my wife and I decided after a period of time that we really just had to restart our lives in a
Sure.
whole different direction.
Yeah.
We needed new scenery, new images around us, new everything,
Mhm.
and that launched us off in a whole different direction than what we otherwise would have been on.
Right.
And um, so I can say that almost everything else that happened after that time in our life was a result of that horrific, painful event.
Sure.
And um, it honestly, it took me 35 years
Mm.
to figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, and so that part is a little sad, that I was that hard headed, right? And that I stayed angry at something. I don't even really know why, for
Mm.
35 years. Um, but it
Sort of.
was literally,
Yeah.
a call from a young lady that had worked for me in Washington, D.C., that made me start just thinking about it all differently. And she said, I just wanted to thank you. And she goes, I was always curious, well, how did you end up in Washington, D.C. in the first place? What made you go?
Oh.
And I couldn't even explain it to her initially, right?
Right.
Because it was still something I couldn't even talk about, except, I mean, I didn't talk about it to anyone because it was such a painful experience. It still is today,
Yeah.
but at least today I can look at it and realize that there was just a different plan for me.
Mhm.
Uh, and it wasn't where I was. I'm not saying that that happened as a result, but that there was some magical design. And if you're one of those people that believes in the creator, then you have to figure out how you can believe in the beauty of the creation and the design.
Mhm. Yeah.
the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, maybe it so happened that young lady thinks that what happened to me benefited her. And so how do you take that? How do you take that away?
Right.
What would have been the scenario otherwise? Right.
Mm-hmm.
How would have, it is this butterfly effect thing, right? You can't
Yeah.
change one component without it not affecting thousand things, thousand other moments in time. And as human beings, and I think maybe even more so as men, we sometimes like to think that we control that
Mm,
and that we own that. And I don't believe we do. I, I also don't believe that we're just like floating around in la la land, but I think
no.
that each and every one of us were given very unique, very special
Yeah.
attributes, and utilizing those changes everything.
Absolutely. I
And when
mean,
you swim with the current instead of against, and you
yeah.
suddenly realize that everything is different.
We even this Sunday we were walking to go get one of our kids out of the kids ministry. And literally everybody else is walking this way.
Yeah, you're
And
the
I said,
same.
"Hey, Charles, I, I think it'd be better if we went that way because I
Yeah,
know in the lobby there's going to be a lot more people. It's actually going to be
like
harder." And it was funny because I felt like a salmon, just like
you
swimming.
did this.
Like Chelsea's behind me, and then Addie was
Yeah,
behind. And but what was interesting is that I originally had that idea because I wanted to go talk to the sound guy,
yeah,
and all I wanted to do, I didn't know him, and I literally just wanted to say, "Hey, man, it sounded so great today."
yeah. What did you do
But it
different?
took us like literally Chelsea was like, Evan, we're not supposed to be going this way." Like she's like
Why
comfortable
are
because
why are we not
everybody
doing what
there's just
everyone else is doing,
everyone
right?
else is going this way. And I'm like, we gotta swim the other way. We're gonna go this way. It's actually the most direct path to the kids ministry. But
Yeah,
I was like, but the initial thing was like, go tell that guy and encourage the sound guy. Now my wife's a sound person and she knows the value of going,
right.
great job. Like rather than
Yeah,
there's feedback and it sounds
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
There's
No,
it's
that
easily, one of those roles where like the only feedback is when there's feedback, you know?
yeah. And with
It's
even more importantly, what did it cost you to do that?
exactly. Like
There's
it
no
was
price.
I was on the side and everyone else was going this way, got to walk up and I just encouraged him, looked him in the eyes, gave him a thumbs up, said, "Man, it sounded so great." And he had another service to do after this.
Yeah,
But he looked up, he lightened up, and he was just smiled. He was, thankful, and we kept on going, and then we joined the rest of the the group going that way. But
yeah.
it's like there's gotta be those, moments where you're like, "Okay, I actually need to I'm feeling led to go do this." And I don't even know his name. Maybe I'll see him the next time. I mean, I don't know, like, what's gonna happen, but the point is it sometimes it just takes us going, being the salmon that's going against the crowd
Yeah.
or going against,
Well, and
the way that everyone else is going and saying, I'm really encouraged right now and feel like I need to go do this, even if I don't get an immediate benefit to myself.
so what's wrong with just deciding that you're going to be happy even when you're sad, right? And again, listen, I don't want anybody to hear us talking about it and come to the conclusion, oh, he's just denying grief or all those sorts of things. No, absolutely
No.
not. I
No,
mean,
we've also buried our firstborn.
right. And I mean, a year ago, I buried my father, who was,
Right.
a mentor in my family. I buried my father-in-law about 30 days ago, a little over
Yeah.
that, a little past that, who was also a an extraordinary mentor for me, just on
Uh-huh.
how to be a man, right? And
Yep.
how to actually be present in people's lives, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. So I can appreciate it like in spades. Honestly, I feel like I've had a lot of tragedy that's impacted, but I, again, we were having this conversation in our own house the other day, and my wife's a great sounding board for this kind of thing. And I just said, you know what? We live in a country where everybody chooses to be angry when it takes the same amount of energy to choose to be happy sometimes. And there's things that are going to make you angry. That's fine. And I'm not saying that we all ought to walk around, pretending to be Pippi Longstocking, right? Either. I understand there's a rational thing, but let's be really honest about the world that we live in as well. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are scum and a lot of people that don't believe what I believe and don't do things the way I think they should do them. And they're rude and they're obnoxious and they drive horrible if you live in this part of the world. But you know what? I have ventilated seats in my pickup that blow cold air on my hiney while I drive. And I have a device that allows me to talk to my granddaughter
Yeah.
3 states away every morning and every night.
Yeah. What
And
are the
she's able to hit the button and send me a funny little picture, and I'm able to have that relationship.
uh,
There's plenty, if you want to look for them, there's plenty of things to be happy about. My bank account may not be the thing that makes me happy,
right.
right? But we there's like we've just been all of us have been given in the country that we live in today, despite all
Mhm.
of its flaws and all of the things that are negative. No people on earth have ever lived in a country that has provided so much for its people for so long as the one that we live in. I
Right.
lived and worked in the Middle East and in the Horn of Africa for a couple of years too, trying to find my way right on what was going to be my purpose. And I can tell you that all of them want to come here. All of them.
Mhm.
They may not say it and they may not be able to express it. They don't understand it. They would love to have one. And so we should, we really can't. And again, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be upset and you're not going to be angry and that all of those things aren't justified. But that's one of the things about your day that you can do is you can choose your attitude a lot. Not all the time. There's going to be days that the grief is overwhelming or
Sure.
that the situation,
Crippling.
that's also fair. But
Yeah.
we're blessed.
Mhm.
We're blessed people. Even the people that Kathy made the comment the other day that um, she thinks the Holy Spirit's been raining on the entire country, here recently. And I just said, it's too bad not everybody. Some people had an umbrella, apparently, didn't they didn't make it.
They
But
didn't get the rain, right.
that's me being the negative one now, right? And I think it's kind of right, right? We've all been blessed just as to where we live and what we have and the opportunities that we have. And people will be critical. They'll say, oh, well, we have the internet and look, it's created porn addictions for men all over the world. You know what? It also put a Bible in the hands of every human being on
Oh,
planet Earth.
right.
So there's a happy to go along with, there's a dark and a light, and you
Mhm.
choose where you stand most of the time. Well, you
Yeah.
always choose where you stand. And you get to choose what you see the vast majority of the time. And I think that, that changes your whole attitude about some of those other things too. Right? So again, what are you going to be about?
Mhm.
What's going to matter to you at the end of the day? Do you care that everyone knows your name, or do you care that a whole bunch of people actually just had a better life here and in the hereafter?
Mhm.
What
Right.
really matters to you at the end of it? And it's kind of interesting that, again, as you mentioned, the lunch that we had, literally, I thought it was like a kind of get to know you, boy, you do great things kind of work. And then I come to
Sure.
find out, we had crossed paths. We had been in the same places in the world and trying to do
Sure.
some of the same things in the world. And at that time, I was doing for the wrong people, the wrong reason, and the wrong way. He's doing for the right reason, right people, the right way. And so while that was all a waste for me, now I understand exactly who the guy is and what he's really all about. And it
Right.
means that I can have a new partner at some point here in the future, right? At least in trying to somebody that can help me find the right people that we want to actually work with and do things for and with and because of, right? That's those are the things that will unveil themselves if you just give it a chance, right? And see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We have all these great things happen to us and we don't want to acknowledge, you know, we focus so much on the fact that no, my electricity bill went up, that thing, right? Cell phone bill went up and bacon now is, higher or eggs are unaffordable or whatever. I mean, I'm glad I'm not raising kids today. I'm glad you are. I'm not, right? Because I don't have the same worries, but uh, that's just something else to be happy about. You're raising them, I'm not. I like your kids.
Right.
So,
You get to spoil them and then
yeah,
hand them back.
right. I just have to eat them and love on them and they're funny and they're like a light for me. For you, they're the night light that doesn't let you go to sleep. Probably it's different. You'll miss that one.
Oh yeah, for sure. Wow.
It's we you we get to make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as I told you before, right? I spent like a giant chunk of my life. Turns out more than half of it, and I can't tell you why.
Man.
Not really. I can tell you the circumstances that started it. I can't
Sure.
actually even tell you what I was angry at.
Mm.
And what did it benefit me? Like, no, it didn't bring me, it never brought me any joy. It never brought me anything else. And now, now I realize that it was there were other things that resulted as a result of that event, but that doesn't lessen that event. It doesn't change
Mhm.
the event of that moment, not a bit. It's still just as painful to think through that time period as it ever was,
Yeah.
but I can put it in context.
Yeah.
And both my kids married wonderful people that are not from where we were.
Mm. Yeah.
So I wouldn't have those two people in my life, right? I wouldn't have
Mhm.
the same set of grandkids that I have today, which
Yeah.
I love to death, right? And I wouldn't have met your dad, who turns out to be one of the
Sure.
best friends I've had, right? And maybe the best friend. And so I, I, I mean, your grandma, right? I wouldn't have
Mhm.
never met her. And I think she likes me more than her own kids. So I tell them that anyway.
That's so funny.
I love it, right? And I mean, it's those kinds of things, right? That you have to like this. It's not about stop and smell the roses. It is about smelling the entire creation that is around.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and everything that has been, none of this happens by accident. Everything around you is in either from man's part or God's part.
Mhm.
So think through that, right? Most bad stuff is man's stuff.
It's
And
true.
we just let that go, right? I mean, we lose sight of it in this never ending pursuit of what? Money, fame, fortune, a legacy that'll be forgotten. What? I mean,
Right.
tell me what it is, right? And um, instead, you can be really appreciative and grateful of the things that are eternal, right? That, I
Yeah.
mean, really do last forever.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I have terrible handwriting. There are plenty of people that love to do, thankful journals and they love to write out stuff and it makes my hand cramp. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not worth it. But the point is finding whatever way that you can be able to recognize, like it's like switching your thinking when you start to go into that negative mode. I mean, I think about, different examples of, um, like you're saying, oh no, poor pitiful me, this thing happened and this
Yeah.
And I had to go, you know what? I need to bless those people, and I need to
Yeah.
find the opportunities that I can be able to move forward, knowing that, yes, there still is pain that will be dealt with over time.
Yeah.
Um, could be related to, your job. It could be related to, you know, someone that you paid to do something and they did it wrong. I mean, there's all
Right.
sorts of things. But
Yeah.
like you're saying, I mean, there's at the end of the day, it is our choice to be able to choose to be thankful, to choose to be grateful. And, this is not even, I was even trying to even go with the theme of Thanksgiving that's coming up, but it's literally something that has to be active. It's not a passive thing.
No.
It's it, it,
No,
it's
no,
it,
no.
it, it just like, forgiveness is not a passive thing. It's a very active,
Yeah.
process. And we can have that perspective shift, and we can have that, whether you like to do journals and cramp your hand like it
Yeah.
happens to me, or if you want to just, you know, speak out and to be able to brainstorm, you know, how can I think from a different perspective? I always think about that example of, like a dad and a kid, and the kid's just like having trouble and isn't liking what's going on. And he's like, hey, picks him up, changes his perspective, realizes he's at a water park, but there's just a line of people in front. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, now,
Well,
now it's
right.
it's not always the water park, but you know, it is just the course of life that
Well,
we
one of,
do need to ask other people to say, "Hey, can you help me see this from a different perspective?"
yeah, and I think sometimes I think we actually get mad because it didn't go the way we planned it to go, right?
Oh, sure.
And I mean, one of the stories that I think gets kind of lost in the Old Testament is the story of Jonah, right? Now, we are told that
Mhm.
story at the very beginning. Jonah gets sent someplace he doesn't really want to go, and he ends up in a whale. Well, to me, the most interesting part dynamic of that story is not that part of the story, but it is the very end where Jonah is actually angry
Yeah.
because he didn't get to go and do what he originally started off to do.
Yeah, that's true.
He's angry because God sent him down a path, right? And then it didn't lead where he thought it was going to really lead.
Yeah.
And so now he's in the
I don't
he's
wanna go
he's
there.
at Nineveh, and what am I doing here? I don't even like these people, right? And
Yeah. I mean, they were terrorists in the
yeah,
day.
right. And so I mean, I mean, literally, but they had actually turned, made a big turn, and but it wasn't about Jonah then.
Yeah.
So the real story of the whole book is actually not about Jonah. It's
Mhm.
about the people that were there in that city at that time, in that place, God's power to do what he wanted to do. And Jonah was just a tool to get to that point. And yeah, there's a lot for us to learn from the rest of that process as well and the whole thing. But I find it and again, this tells you something about me. I finally realized that I didn't need to be Jonah,
Hmm.
right? I don't need to be that guy. I'm so focused on what happened to me and my horrible path to get to where the place
Mhm.
here. All of that is kind of irrelevant today in this moment in time. You get to look at it. And if everyone, I think everybody would answer this question pretty much consistently. How many great decisions did you make when you were angry? And how many of them did you, great decisions did you make when you were thinking clear and
Yeah.
positive and well. And that, again, not Pippi Longstocking kind of positive. I mean, but really being honest about what's in front of you and trying to, as you said, having that having that spirit of forgiveness about sometimes is critical to that. And sometimes spirit of forgetfulness is important as well.
That's
Um,
true.
etc. And we just get lost in that. And again, if you look for them, do I? I believe that those people that we've talked about that came into my life, that were part of my life, were really, central to that, right? One of the regulators in my life is my spouse, right?
Yeah.
That sometimes like pushes me up and sometimes like amps me down a little bit. She does it really gently and, and lovingly, right? So I can understand how all that could have gone different. Yeah. Again, you can't change yesterday and, and you really honestly can't change a whole lot about the day, but you can change tomorrow. And
Mhm.
so when you start, like, you learn from yesterday for sure. Right?
Yeah.
If you don't learn, that's just being, we're also told not to be a fool, but don't be
Yeah.
fooled, right? Learn from the mistakes that we make. Read. We can't, we can only wallow in the pit so long and then you're just a pig,
Mm.
right?
Um,
And, I do believe we're allowed to do that, for a while, but at some point you stop being who you are. In my case, it's 35 years, whatever.
oof. Yeah.
It's a long time. And again, a whole bunch of blessings came to me during that whole process. Now it's going to take me the rest of my life to actually tell people what I appreciate that they did for me way back when. Um,
There
but
was a speaker that I saw at a huge business conference. I was actually at AT&T Stadium, and he was basically saying like, something bad happens. You know, basically, you can have that day,
yeah,
and you can turn on your Lionel Richie. You can have
do
a
whatever it
20
is,
minute
right?
party,
Yeah,
and then the next day you wake up like you just need to go
yeah,
after it.
yeah. My
Like, oh, you got rejected. Oh, that client said no. Oh, whatever the case may be.
yeah, and the reality, is that, and sometimes, obviously, in certain circumstances, it's going to take more than a day. But at some point,
Right.
even in the midst of all of that, right, you still got to figure out how you actually move forward. And
Yeah.
again, I say this over and over. I say this to myself all the time when I get really frustrated about the stacks of paper or too many devices and too many things that distract me from what I want to focus on or what I think I want to focus on. And and the reality is that all of this stuff turns out to be a gift if it's used properly. Almost, you can have things in your life that are not a gift in any way, right? But most of the things in my life are gifts. I
Mhm.
don't have those other, and um, mainly it's because you, you, you you're going to walk in the direction that you look, and so that gives you a chance as well. You can keep your head on a swivel, but you're still going to walk where you look.
That's true.
One of the key lessons that I learned in the military was that I never really understood why they had to break us down to the point that we did, but it was so that we could make decisions, that we could follow a series we could make a series of decisions without allowing the emotions of the moment to dictate what was happening, but actually observe and be real about the environment that we were in. And
Mm.
I do think that's important today. And we kind of allow ourselves in a society to over justify our own personal feelings sometimes. And we turn our feelings into beliefs instead of our beliefs into feelings.
Right.
And those are 100% antagonistic to each other.
Mhm.
And um, you get to choose which end of the spectrum you want to be on. And, um, and so it's, to a large degree, you get to choose. And I think that's important in business. I think it's important when you're looking for people that you're going to do business with,
Yeah.
right? There's people I don't want to do business.
Sure.
Okay. Right. They don't share my value or they don't share the goals that I have.
I was just going to talk about values and overlaid within that.
Yeah, no. And so, you know, I mean, everything you do demonstrates what your values are to a certain
Mhm.
extent, right? Even when you lie to yourself,
Mm.
because a lot of times we do that, right? We say, oh, well, my values are that I only want to do business with people that are such and such and such and such and that have the same kind of values that I do. And then somebody offers you an amazing deal that really is screwing somebody else on the side just straight into the ground. So what are your values?
Yeah.
Back, I mean, you're telling yourself over and over and over a lie, or you're telling yourself over and over and over the truth.
Hmm.
And intermittently, inserting some mistakes and errors and judgment and all those other sorts of things, right? But we you get to again, you get to choose. You get to choose and you say, oh, well, I have to do so and so because I have bills to pay. Okay. Rewind back to the decision before that one then, and the one before
Right.
that one, and the one before that one, and now analyzing honestly, what is the real mistake that you made?
Hmm.
And again, that's just about us being truthful and honest with ourselves, right? Which is not, I think, it's not really inherently an American quality anymore. Used
Mm.
to be, but we got caught up in the portrait of ourselves that is social media and the images that other people see of us, right? And instead of, and it's fine. I don't think people need to go on social media and talk about that they have a hangnail or that they stub their toe and their little
Sure.
hurts all day or that they wish they could lose more weight. You want to do that, that's fine. All of that is good. I'm just saying that that you shouldn't be seen by that.
Hmm.
You should see your own reflection in the mirror and understand what that really is.
That's it.
And that's a painful thing, right? If you haven't done that before, I'll just tell you, for people that have never really been 100% honest with themselves, when you first do it, you are not going to like what you'd see.
Hmm.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe I'm unique, right? Or maybe I was the most awful guy in the world. That's what people lobbyists anyway, and that's what I'd spent most of my professional life doing. But no, I again, and so we laugh about it inside our family, right? Because sometimes when things are really cool, not good, I get reminded, oh, I thought we were going to be happy, right?
Oh,
And
right.
and it's a joke, right,
Mm.
internally, but it is actually a good joke because it does remind you to go like, oh, okay, I can either be upset that I have a flat tire, or I can be happy that I have a car and enough money to get a new tire.
Or you didn't like run into like
Oh yeah,
there has been times where I've just been literally been like, oh, thank you God that I
at least I
didn't
have it
cause
in
a
the car.
wreck and everyone in the car is safe. Like,
Yeah,
whew.
right.
Or
Like,
I've got enough money to get a whole new set of tires and I was on the brink. Like you go into for a rotation, you're like, sir, we can't
did you
drive off
notice
this
the cords
lot.
are showing on your tires half the way around? What?
Right. I
Nah.
actually thought of that story from uh it was like a couple weeks ago. I was actually driving, around and I had that I just that memory where it was like, "Oh, yeah, that that was actually kinda dangerous," and
Yeah.
I was oblivious to it,
Yeah.
but I was like, "Oh, I mean, we had the money to be able to go get 4 new tires and everyone was safe."
Right. And I, again, I, I think one of the, one of the penalties that we probably experience is that we don't appreciate the amount of blessedness that most of us actually live in. Right.
Mhm.
And when I say that, and again, I'll be honest with you. So like, I'm not for sure, uh, I had great parents, right? My mom and dad told me they loved me every day. They were, they loved each other. There wasn't strife in our home. There was nobody that
Mhm.
was used. There wasn't any of those sorts of things that ever happened. They weren't perfect.
Sure.
Right. Next, none of us are. And, and I do, I'll be honest with you. I thought everyone lived life.
Right. That was your experience. That was
That
your
was my life
perspective.
experience and my
Right.
perspective. And in today's world, right? So that was my truth, right? That's what
Oh,
people call it.
sure.
But the reality is that really wasn't true because it's, it's a perspective that
Mm.
pointed me in a direction that it pointed me. Later in life, I find out that a lot of people didn't have, almost no one had what
Right.
I was in the minority, not the majority. And, um, I have to say, I was kind of like flabbergasted. I couldn't understand how people would make that choice. And then you realize, well, not all of it was a choice, right?
Right.
Not everyone in that was in that environment got to choose any aspect of it, right? Et
Mm.
cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, the perspective of other people matters greatly, right? And when you, once you can get your head wrapped around that, then all of a sudden your expectations of how they take that and happy for them is going to be different than happy for you, or appreciative for them is different than appreciative of you. We, right. I go to a men's group every Thursday morning. We have a great lesson, lesson series. And for the last 5 weeks, we've been talking about Genesis, and literally just a single verse where he fell for the serpent's trick, right?
Ooh. Well,
And, but in that, we also do some small group sessions that we sit around as men and just talk about the things, that are kind of unique. And what you begin to realize is that we're all dramatically different. I'm the old guy in our little group, right? Most of these
right.
guys are younger than me. A lot of them aren't even married yet, don't have kids, or, they're still in the early parts of their life. And that part of life is a lot more stressful. I get it. I do understand. I remember. You get older and you start thinking about dying more often too,
Mm.
though, right? And there's a different kind of stress that goes with that. All your friends die. I spend a reasonable amount of time going to funerals. And, and so the good thing about that circle is that if you're really honest, you can sit there and you can like take a whole bunch from all the different people that are in that room because they're trying to figure this out, right? And then all of a sudden you realize, this guy didn't have a dad. This guy didn't have a mom. This guy didn't have either one.
Right.
And this guy had some just like mine. This one had
Mhm.
parents that stayed together, but they fought like cats and dogs all the time. And this guy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Different
And
environment, different, yeah,
yeah.
situations. Totally.
And so what am I going to gripe at this? I mean, what are the complaints that I really have? Get a grip on yourself sometime, you know, and be pleased. And if you came out of that environment and you survived, I mean, this was like the real shocker for me. And it was what was part of me, that transformation was one of the guys saying, I'm just glad I'm not there. And
Right.
somebody that I think you've met before is Alfred Adams, who has like this amazing life story that is not all good.
Mm.
And he's turned it into something that's truly special, where he's like one of the most inspirational human beings that I've ever known in my life. And I love the guy like at a whole different level, literally, because I can look at him and I know the whole backstory to how he got
Mhm.
to where he is today.
Wow.
And I still see how he responds to adversity today or challenges today. And like he makes me look bad because he responds so well.
Oh,
And
man.
instead of me taking that in a negative way, I take it as a challenge, right? Like,
Right.
huh, right? Hey, like he's the example you're supposed to be observing today. His whole business took a giant step backwards. And look at him, he's still whistling while
Mhm.
he works, literally. And the, we all have we all have, I think if you look around, every one of us have an Alfred Adams somewhere in our life. He says the same thing to me once in a while that he couldn't believe that I ever did, where I did, et cetera, et cetera. And
Right.
that
He's like, Jay's the most interesting man in the world, you know?
maybe not, but I, it literally is like just though, you need those. I think those people are gifts too. Right.
Yeah.
And he would tell you that he's never been happier.
Hmm.
Right. This whole path for him is like winter, winter chicken dinner now, uh, and because it could have gone way different, and it did for a lot of years.
Hmm.
Could have kept going, and luckily he had some people that like just were there at that right moment and
Mhm.
turned him up 1 degree at a time.
Yeah.
That
That's
is,
what we need. And we can do that for other people.
yeah, sure. Why not? Right? Why
Mhm.
wouldn't? Why wouldn't we? And again, I think here's the funny thing, right? If you can do it and still, now this is not like a biblical thing, right? But if you can be a Christian and be successful in business, why would?
Mm.
Because they're not, they don't, they're not in opposition to each other.
Sure.
Solomon's problem wasn't that he was rich.
Right.
That wasn't what condemned Solomon at the end.
It's true.
And, and so we, if you can figure out how you actually magnify that and
Mhm.
how you do all those things for the right reasons, then shame on you if you don't. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
really,
mean,
just shame on you if you don't.
and ultimately, like the scripture talks about working for the Lord and not for men, as in that was part of the downfall was Solomon looking to please others. And
Yeah,
so
he turned, but
you have the opportunity, no matter how much little resource financially you have, or
oh yeah,
you've
it's
got
not about the
you got
money.
all the numbers and all the commas like you're saying in your net worth. The intention of our heart and the way that we, carry ourselves and that we um love God and love others is
Period.
really what matters.
Yeah, and it really, and again, you, uh, I since I sincerely think that if you give yourself enough time to think about it, you get to choose. You for sure we know you get to choose what you believe. That's a choice you get to make. And
Mhm.
those beliefs can determine how you feel about a whole lot of them. And if you reverse that, there's, a guy that's got like just beat up like crazy for a mistake that he made a long time ago is Robert Morris, who's a minister, was the pulpit minister, lead minister at Gateway Church in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And but I still actually watch some of his sermons every once in a while late at night
Mhm.
when I try to just like reset my brain a little bit. And
Yeah.
the other night he had a lesson that just like it was one of the great ones of all time. His stuff's all on YouTube, so people can go look him up and find him. You can also see all the stories where people are wanting to just butcher it over
Mm.
a mistake that he made that he admitted a long time ago, right? Back to that forgetful
Mm.
versus forgiveness comment that I made earlier. People, but with that said, he makes the comment, he goes, there was a time in my life when I realized that I was walking in the wrong direction. And I looked around, I go, well, God, where are you?
Mm.
And he goes, and it occurred to me, God never moved.
Mm.
He was in exactly the same place that he always was. And he goes, I was in the lesson, he goes, and then I realized I'm a long way away. And I go, well, can't you just come over here? And he goes, no, I can't.
Mm.
And he just walk right here. It's free, right? There's no pain or penalty involved.
Mhm.
come back here. And he goes, then you get back in the right place and you realize there's a comfort zone, right? And it's back. Now I'm back sitting on the couch with a loved one, right? That kind of comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be natural. Now you're holding your kid in your arms while they've gone to sleep, and they're 100% dependent upon you. And if that's not one of those things that doesn't make you feel a certain way, then you probably need to like check yourself.
Yeah.
You know, um, you we spend so much time trying to think uh, about all the things that surround something that sometimes we lose sight of what the importance is. And we were having a discussion the other day here about in your life how many people have you kissed, right? Well, if you went to a little small church like I did, I kissed and got kissed by about 50 old ladies every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday, right? But what's the difference between that kiss and the kiss, the first time that your kid kisses, that really kisses, not just slobbers on your face and makes your glasses smudge. I mean, really kisses you because you made them feel better.
Yeah.
Or between the love of your life, right? And those kisses, as opposed to a little old lady that you love dearly too, right? Giving you a kiss on the cheek, telling you that you're cute. She's glad she got to see you again, blah, blah, blah. It is, that's when the difference, that's just walking back to that place where you're supposed to be, trying to find that place where you're really supposed to be. And you can write about it. You can talk. People have written songs about it. People have done entire movies about it. People have done whatever. But the truth is, the difference.
Right.
I mean, if you've never had the opportunity to do that, I feel bad.
Well, Jay, what's a good way for people to get in touch with you and, learn about what you're doing in business and just stay in touch?
I think at this point, maybe just an email is probably the easiest way to like start the process. But it's JAY at truittinc.com, TRUITTINC.com. And I'll take advice too. You just want to send me a message telling me I'm an idiot. You won't be the first. So do it. All good. We're looking for people, and I think over time we hope to be able to actually replicate this. So I'm one of the guinea pigs that we're trying to automate as much of the systems as we can, because we do realize when we get in the middle of all this that we don't want to. There's a whole lot of your information I never need to see or need to be involved in it, but we just want to facilitate you being able to reach exactly the right people that are used to dealing with the needs that people have in that particular scenario. We want to get to a real pro as quickly as possible. And so we're looking at some, I'll make sure you have them in the future, but we'll have just real simple web interfaces that people can go through and start the process. But now send me an email. I'd love to hear from people. And if there's a way that we can figure out how to work together, I'd love to do it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, look
Good
forward
to see you,
to
man.
good to see you. Hope to see you over Thanksgiving. And
Yep. Well, yeah, you're going to be here.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, we'll chat later.
And spoil your kids a little bit.
There you go. All right.
All right.
Wow. That was a lot to digest. I'd love to hear your thoughts about Thanksgiving, about forgiveness, and about the impact, the light that you can be able to show to others in this season. So please let me know. Please reach out. Please comment. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it simple, Saints.